What's up, guys? Time to show off a new screen printed radioactive build. So we've got a new screen printed dial. Nice little pop, a couple pops of color there that we then add into the stitching here on the strap. So I did a couple things with this. I used aged silver hands to show that distressing in there. Actually, I need to turn this in front of me. Here we go. I'm going to open this part up. So did some nice aged hands in there. A nice solid black hand though. Went through and aged a 710 case and then gave it a little bit of brush stroke through it. So this is a 710 case. You don't see these too often. And the primary reason you don't see these too often is because they house a shorter stem for the crown, because the gap between the glass and the crown is closer and I can't use all the bezels that I want to use. So after I built this watch and I was like, I'm using this radioactive style bezel, I had aged it so it doesn't age the anodized aluminum, but it ages the steel, right? So after I do that, I sit here forever trying to get it onto the watch, and I can't figure out why. I can put it on one side, but it can never snap anything over here. And I finally realized it was because I was hitting this crown, which is the reason I don't use these cases very often. So since this is more of an hour referencing with tick marks on here, so you've got your minute reference on your kind of radioactive logos. The rest are your hour logos. I thought, well, we're not really going to be moving this around. So I took a Dremel out, and you can't really see because the crown's in the way, but I notched it to where I can snap it on in this one spot, and it will move, but only in the area where I've notched it. So if it's pulled all the way to the right, it's pretty much lined up perfect. It can go a little bit to the left where it's just slightly off, but you wouldn't really tell. But if you did, you just pull it slightly to the right. So I did a notch in the metal so that, and it's kind of rounded, so that it would snap down just right there. So the only movement it has is where it's hitting the crown tube back and forth, which is right here at where it needs to be. So this bezel is not one that's going to get spun around. Did a radioactive logo milled caseback. Sometimes I've gone through and done the distressing on these, but when it's always on your skin, it doesn't really hold unless you're doing more of a Cerakote. So I just did a nice solid one. You're only going to see it when you flip it over anyway. And then I aged a 710 crown because I had a nice crown that matched everything. And then I remembered, oh yeah, they take a special crown. I had to go through all my old crowns and then find one in there that wasn't laser etched, because I used this case back before I did any kind of radioactive or biohazard builds, and I had one that had not had anything done with. So we aged that, and then I had a nice strap from Mr. Jonathan Gillespie over at Wristbound. That's nice black leather with an orange accent to really help kind of give that dial a pop, you know, continue out that accent. So bezel will not turn. It is a stationary bezel. Automatic mechanical rotor in the back, so as you're moving, it moves. Back the crown off the threads until you hear it and feel it clicking. At that point, you can wind. And a wind is a turn that way. Turning it towards you doesn't wind it, but it is a lot easier to keep your finger spacing and go back and forth. You cannot overwind it, so don't worry about that. The only thing you may have with this is pulling the crown, because normally you don't have a bezel that comes over as far, and it feels like your fingers get closer, but if you notice, I didn't even touch the bezel, and it still felt to me like, oh, it's kind of harder to pull that out. but it's just kind of an illusion. You do kind of bump into it a little bit more, right? Unless you're actually holding it out here, because it does swing out. But that's the reason I stopped using those cases, is because it limited the bezels that I can use. You'll see a lot of aftermarket bezels have a taper. It will taper and then kick over. You're like, oh, cool, it fits. Yeah, but now your crown is under your bezel and you can't really get up under it unless you're experienced and you have watches from me. So I wouldn't even want to give one of those to somebody unless they had several watches from me, or they're used to my watches, going, oh, okay, it's a little bit awkward, but I know how to do this. So anyway, now I can set your time and actually see the dial a little bit better there. Okay, Google, what time is it?
12:20 p.m.
12:20. Push it over, get it out of that time setting, and then wind it down. And there is your distressed screen printed radioactive build with matching-esque beads. Lots of colorway there. It's going to come in a radioactive logo slider box with the clock watch dial style fabric pillow. It's going to come with a few things. Watch cleaners to keep the... I feel like I went through that and I didn't explain. You can't overwind your watch, so don't worry about that. It has a 31-hour power reserve on it. You've got a bit of a wobble crown, so whenever you're setting your time, if you feel that it's moving, that's just deflecting lateral pressure from going into the stem and into the movement. And about a 31-hour plus power reserve on it, so you want to wind it just a little bit before you put it on to make sure you do not lose time throughout the day. Because if you're not very active, you're not moving that rotor back and forth, therefore it's not winding. So, in case I didn't go over that, I feel like I was maybe talking about the bezel more, or that awkward crown situation. That's it. So just making sure I went over that. Watch cleaner, good on all glass metal parts, everything here in the center. Non-streaking, non-toxic, non-residue, as well as a microfiber. Leather conditioner to keep that strap perfectly soft. Apply it on the front and back using a rag. Don't use the microfiber. Let it soak in, remove any excess. That's only if you need that. And then lastly, you're going to have some fine scratch remover. This is Novus 2 from Amazon, just repackaged. It is for the acrylic domed glass on this, because you can scratch it. But if you do, no big deal. You'll put a tiny bit of this on it, and you'll buff it out using your color matching microfiber. If the scratch is up and down, just go left and right, filling that scratch, haze it, buff it out. And I put way too much oomph in these. I put way too much stuffing in these watch pillows. I mean, I guess that's cool and all, but I probably, that's like 1.5 in there. So it is stout. So that's only if you need that. So if you scratch it, you're just going to buff it with your thumb, generate a little bit of heat, and buff it, and that should take it out. If it doesn't take it out, wait just a little bit, let that solidify, and then go back in and do it again. You're just kind of building up what has been removed. So that's the build for tonight's event. That is the new one. Joe didn't grab one last week. On Wednesday, he went with a bag. So only had to make one for this Saturday. So that's the build. If it's going to you, congrats. Thank you so much for your support. And if you want me to build you something custom and unique, reach out and I'll see what I can do. And if you want to continue to see videos like this, like and subscribe as I put them up all the time. Thanks, guys.